My name's Miles, I'm 39 years old, and I don't do drama. Or at least, I didn't think I did. Until a cruise, a surprise, and a family member with a god complex pulled me into the kind of emotional whirlwind I never saw coming. I'm the kind of guy who minds his own business, keeps his circle tight, and does everything I can to protect the people I love. That circle includes my wife Tessa and our 2 kids. Liam, who just turned 10 and has the biggest heart I've ever seen in a kid, and Ava, our 7-year-old firecracker who has this spark that lights up every room she enters. They're my world, plain and simple, which is probably why what happened hurt as deeply as it did, and why I refused to let it go unanswered. To understand what went down, you need a bit of background. My dad remarried when I was 16, and while I've never been the type to resent people for trying to move on after loss, my mom passed when I was 13. Something about Marlene never sat right with me. She was sugar-coated poison from day one. Sweet in public, polished like a politician, but always calculating. My dad, bless him, was head over heels. I think he needed someone who made life feel normal again, and she gave him that illusion. But to me and my younger brother, Chris, she was cold. Not outwardly cruel, just indifferent. She tolerated us, never embraced us. That's the kind of woman she is. Always keeping score, always calculating her next move like life's a chessboard and everyone else is a pawn. She had one daughter from her first marriage, Elise, who was 14 when they got married. Elise was, and still is, her pride and joy. The golden child. And I say that not out of bitterness, but because it was just obvious to everyone who paid attention. If Elise got a B in school, it was, well, it's probably the teacher's fault. If I got an A, it was, you should have gotten an A+. Every holiday, every birthday, it was like living in 2 separate worlds under one roof. Chris and I got socks and a firm handshake. Elise got a necklace, a handwritten letter, and a teary-eyed speech about how proud Marlene was to be her mom. It wasn't even subtle. By the time I moved out at 18, I'd already accepted that Marlene wasn't my family. I saw my dad on holidays, called him once a week, and left it at that. Elise and I never got close. In fact, we actively avoided each other. And that was fine, peaceful, even. Tessa and I built a quiet, beautiful life for ourselves. We both worked hard, saved diligently, and when the time was right, we had our 2 kids. We don't live extravagantly, but we've made some good choices. We bought a modest house in a great neighborhood, and every year we take one big family trip. Just us. No extended family, no drama. Just 4 people, 1 adventure, and a million laughs. That's our thing. This year, I planned something extra special. We've always dreamed of taking Liam and Ava on a cruise. We've talked about it for years, but either the timing wasn't right or the budget was too tight. But this year, everything lined up. I managed to snag a last-minute deal on a 7-day Caribbean cruise. Balcony cabin, all-inclusive, kid-friendly excursions, the whole 9 yards. It wasn't cheap, but I paid in full, locked in the tickets, and even kept it a secret from the kids. I wanted to surprise them the week before we left. Tessa and I started planning little hints and clues, and I could already picture the look on their faces when we told them. I couldn't wait. Now here's where the first little crack appeared. The kind you notice but try to ignore because you're too happy to let anything ruin your vibe. I made the mistake of mentioning the cruise at a family barbecue. It wasn't even a big announcement or anything. Just casual small talk with my dad, who was asking if we were doing anything fun with the kids this summer. I said something like, actually, yeah, we're taking them on a surprise cruise next month. That was it. I should have noticed the way Marlene's eyes flicked over to me, sharp and quick, like a hawk clocking movement in the grass. She smiled that tight, lip-only smile of hers, the one that never reaches her eyes, and said, a cruise? How lovely. Those can be quite expensive, can't they? I shrugged, trying to keep it light. We found a good deal. Booked early. It's been on our bucket list for a while. She tilted her head, then glanced at Elise, who had been sitting quietly next to her, sipping some overpriced matcha thing. Elise perked up, leaned in, and asked, wait, you're taking both kids? Like all 4 of you? I nodded. Yeah, they've never been on a cruise before. We thought it would be a fun way to celebrate the end of the school year. There was a beat of silence, just long enough to notice. Elise gave this tiny sigh, then looked down at her lap. Marlene patted her hand and gave her this almost theatrical sympathetic smile. I should have left it there, but I didn't. What's up? I asked, not unkindly. Everything okay? Elise shook her head, still looking down. It's nothing. It's just, the twins have been dying to go on a trip like that. But things are tight right now, you know how it is. Child support's late again, and Mom's been helping a lot already. Now here's the thing. I'm not a jerk. I know Elise has been through some hard times with her divorce, and I don't wish financial hardship on anyone. But the way it was dropped into the conversation felt deliberate, like bait. I nodded sympathetically and said something vague about wishing them the best. Then I changed the subject. But the rest of the barbecue felt off. Marlene didn't say much, but she kept watching me. And when we were packing up to leave, she walked over and said, with that same tight smile, "You're such a generous father, Miles. I hope your kids know how lucky they are." I smiled back, but something about the way she said, "your kids," made my stomach twist, like it was laced with something heavier than words. I brushed it off. For the next 2 weeks, everything seemed fine. We kept the cruise a secret from the kids, printed the boarding passes, packed the suitcases while they were at school. Tessa made a little treasure hunt with clues that would lead to the reveal. I even picked up little captain hats for Liam and Ava from Amazon. Goofy, I know, but that's just who we are. We were supposed to tell them that Saturday morning. The cruise left Monday. Everything was ready. Then Friday night rolled around. I got a call from the cruise line. At first, I thought it was just a confirmation call or maybe a last-minute schedule change. But no, the woman on the other end was polite, but clearly confused. She asked if I had made some recent changes to our reservation, specifically a guest name change. I blinked. "No," I said slowly. "What name change?" She double-checked. "It looks like 2 of the minor guest names on your cabin were changed earlier today through our online portal. The adult names are the same, Miles and Tessa, but the children's names are now registered as Natalie and Caleb." I went cold. Natalie and Caleb are Elise's twins. I pulled up the reservation on my laptop and stared at the screen like it was in another language. Sure enough, the names had been changed. My kids' names. Replaced. I didn't understand. I had never shared my login. The reservation was under my name. I controlled the payment. How could this even happen? And then, like a slow, sickening trickle of water down the back of your neck, it hit me. 2 weeks ago, at the barbecue, I'd let my dad borrow my laptop for something. He wanted to pull up an old family recipe. I was chatting with Chris and didn't think anything of it. The browser auto-filled my login when he typed C in the address bar. Cruiseworld.com popped right up. He must have logged in without realizing it. Or worse, someone else noticed. I stared at the screen, at the new names. And then the phone call from the cruise agent played back in my head again. Name change through the online portal. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The tight smile, the lingering glances, the carefully timed pity story from Elise, the way Marlene had emphasized your kids, the silence from my dad lately. And just like that, the slow build turned into a flood of boiling fury. Because this wasn't a glitch. This wasn't an accident. This was planned. And if I didn't act fast, my kids, my actual kids, were about to lose the surprise of a lifetime. I took a breath, my heart pounding. And then I opened a new tab. Because Marlene may have started this game, but she had no idea who she was playing with. And I was done letting her make the rules. I barely slept that night. My mind was racing with 1,000 thoughts at once, all tangled and toxic. Anger, betrayal, panic, disbelief. I'd planned this cruise down to the tiniest detail. I could still see Ava's face when she asked if dolphins had best friends, and Liam's excitement when he saw a YouTube video about water slides on cruise ships. This wasn't just a vacation. This was a memory we'd been building quietly, piece by piece, for years. And now someone thought they could just rewrite it. By morning, I had confirmed what I feared. Marlene had accessed the reservation portal using my saved login, either directly or by watching when Dad borrowed my laptop. There was a digital log showing the exact timestamp the name change happened. I called the cruise line again and asked if they could revert the changes. The woman was kind, but her answer was cautious. "Because the tickets were technically under your name, you're the primary passenger and we can initiate an investigation. But because the minors listed now have scanned passport information uploaded and security details filled out, it would require identity verification and a potential delay of boarding." In other words, if I pushed this too hard or too fast, we might lose the trip entirely. It wasn't just a clerical swap, it was sabotage with a paper trail. I hung up and just sat there at the kitchen table, staring at the screen like it might apologize. Tessa walked in, still in her robe, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Miles, you okay?" I looked at her for a long moment, and then I said the words that made it all real. "She gave their tickets to Elise's kids." Tessa blinked. "What?" I explained everything. How Marlene must have logged in. How the name changes went unnoticed. How the cruise line now had Elise's kids on the reservation, not ours. Tessa didn't say a word. She just sat down slowly and covered her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears, not because of the money, not even because of the betrayal, but because she knew how excited our kids were going to be. How much we'd poured into making this special. And it all hit me again. This wasn't some casual boundary crossed. This was a surgical strike. And the worst part? It was dressed up as helping family. Around noon, I got a text. It was from Elise. "Hey, just wanted to say thanks again. The twins are so excited. They've never even been on a plane, let alone a cruise. This means the world to us. You have no idea." No idea? I had every idea. That text confirmed it wasn't just Marlene acting alone. Elise knew. She knew. And instead of coming to me like a grown adult, she went through Marlene, snaked her way into something that didn't belong to her, and let me find out through a call from customer service. The gall. I didn't reply. Instead, I sat with it. Let it simmer. Let the betrayal settle into my bones like cold. And that's when I knew. This wasn't going to be another case of me brushing things under the rug for the sake of keeping the peace. Not this time. But before I could act, things got worse. Later that afternoon, I called my dad. I didn't accuse. I just asked. "Hey, quick question. Did you notice anything weird when you borrowed my laptop at the barbecue?" There was a long pause on the line. Then he sighed. "Miles, listen. Marlene mentioned something about the cruise. She said Elise might have found a way for the kids to go too. I didn't understand the details. I thought maybe you added them yourself. She made it sound like you offered." "I offered," I repeated, stunned. "Why would I offer our kids' spots to someone else?" I don't know. Marlene said you were being generous, that you understood Elise was struggling and wanted to help out." I couldn't speak for a moment. Not because I didn't have words, but because every word I wanted to say was stuck behind a wall of disbelief. "You actually believe that?" I asked quietly. He hesitated. "I didn't ask questions, Miles. You know how things are. Sometimes it's easier to go with it than stir the pot." There it was. The phrase I grew up around. Easier not to stir the pot. The same phrase that got used when Marlene gave Elise an expensive laptop for college and told me I could borrow Chris's if I needed to type a resume. The same phrase that got tossed around when Elise borrowed my car in high school and put a dent in it, and I got scolded for being irresponsible with parking. Easier. Always easier. I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. But inside, something had snapped. We had one day left before the cruise. I couldn't fix the booking without a full review from the cruise line, which wouldn't happen in time. I couldn't confront Elise without risking her doubling down and spinning a sob story to the whole family. And I couldn't go to Marlene without her playing innocent like she always did. So instead, I played it cool. Tessa and I packed the kids' bags anyway. Kept the surprise plan going. We didn't say a word to Liam and Ava, even though it killed us. Just in case. Maybe it was foolish hope. Maybe I needed to feel like something was still in my control. That night, I got another text. This time, from Marlene. "Just wanted to thank you again for being so selfless. I know Elise was hesitant to accept your kindness at first, but this will be life-changing for those kids. You're a good man, Miles. A good son." I stared at the message, then reread it, slowly, line by line. Every word was a weapon dipped in sugar. A calculated jab wrapped in praise. Selfless. Kindness. Good son. She wasn't thanking me. She was informing me. This was her way of declaring her win. The next day, Saturday, the day we were supposed to tell the kids about the cruise, everything reached a breaking point. We went to visit my dad. He'd invited us over for a quick family lunch before the trip. Said he wanted to wish us well. I didn't want to go, but Tessa thought we should at least try, for the kids' sake. When we arrived, Elise and her twins were already there. The moment I saw them, my stomach turned. Natalie and Caleb were wearing new backpacks with cartoon cruise ships on them. Elise looked like she'd just come from a salon. She smiled at us with this calm, smug confidence like we were all just catching up before a family movie night. Marlene greeted us at the door like nothing was wrong. "Tessa." "Miles," she said brightly. Come in, come in. I made lemon bars. I know Liam likes those." Liam perked up. "I do." Ava ran inside to play with Natalie. Tessa gave me a look. Tight, controlled. I squeezed her hand. We made it through lunch in silence. Forced smiles. Hollow small talk. My dad was unusually quiet. Elise kept making vague references to how generous some people could be. Marlene kept deflecting with over-the-top praise. And then, just as we were about to leave, she dropped the match. She handed us a small card, like a thank you card. And in front of everyone, she said, "We just wanted to give you a little something. You deserve some recognition for your sacrifice." I opened the card. Inside was a $50 Starbucks gift card and a note that read, "For your kindness and generosity. The twins are going to have the time of their lives." And just like that, everything inside me flipped. This wasn't just entitlement. This wasn't just manipulation. This was mockery. A $50 gift card in exchange for my children's memories. My jaw clenched. I looked at her, then Elise, then my dad, who wouldn't meet my eyes. Liam tugged at my sleeve. "Dad, when are we doing our surprise?" I couldn't breathe. This was the moment. The exact second when all the pretending ended. The pressure in my chest had built to the point of collapse. And I realized something right then and there. This wasn't just about a cruise. It never was. This was about control. About Marlene rewriting the story of who deserved what in this family. And I was done letting her hold the pen. But I didn't explode. I didn't shout. Instead, I looked at her with the calmest voice I could summon and said, "You've made a big mistake." Marlene blinked, still holding her saccharine smile. "I'm sorry." I nodded slowly. "You think this is about a trip. It's not. It's about my kids. And what you just did, that was the last time you'll ever touch my family again." Tessa took the kids' hands. Liam and Ava looked up, confused. Elise stood frozen, half laughing like she wasn't sure if I was serious. My dad finally looked at me, silent, ashamed. I turned to leave. Marlene's voice followed me like a snake sliding through grass. "You're overreacting, Miles. It's just a vacation. Don't be so dramatic." I paused in the doorway. Then I turned back and said quietly, "You're right. It was just a vacation. But now it's something else." And then I walked out. Because I had a plan. One they'd never see coming. I didn't cry when we got in the car. I didn't scream, or punch the steering wheel, or spiral into a rant the way I probably should have. Instead, I just sat there gripping the wheel, staring blankly at the road, while my kids buckled in behind me. Liam hummed something under his breath, totally oblivious. Ava was playing with a stuffed dolphin we'd bought weeks ago in anticipation of the cruise. Tessa was silent beside me, hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed out the window like she was trying to hold herself together with sheer will. The silence hurt more than any words. We didn't say anything on the drive home. Not because we didn't want to, but because we couldn't. I think if either of us had opened our mouths, everything would have cracked wide open. So we just drove, the cruise that never happened still packed in suitcases in the trunk. When we got home, I told the kids the surprise had been delayed. I tried to make it sound exciting. "We're going to do something even better soon," I said with a forced grin. Liam smiled politely. Ava frowned but nodded. She always knew when something was off, even if she couldn't name it. Tessa waited until they were in their rooms before she finally broke. I found her standing in the hallway, her hands over her face, shaking. "I just wanted to see their faces when we told them," she whispered. "That's all I wanted." That moment, I wrapped my arms around her, feeling a lump rise in my throat. "I know," I said. "Me too." That night was one of the lowest I'd ever felt. It wasn't just about the money, though losing nearly $4,000 in tickets wasn't nothing. It was about trust, about how easily it could be twisted, stolen, violated, about how someone who shared your last name could look you in the eye, smile, and gut you clean. And worst of all, I felt like I let it happen. I was supposed to protect them. That guilt sat heavy for weeks. Every time I passed the fridge with our little sticky note countdown, 5 days until surprise, I felt it again. I took it down without a word. I canceled our time off requests. I quietly deleted the cruise confirmation emails. We told the kids we'd do a beach trip instead, but the spark wasn't there. And I started noticing changes, small things. Liam stopped talking about dolphins. Ava didn't wear her cruise shirt anymore. That joy we'd bottled up so carefully just fizzled out. I didn't talk to my dad. He didn't reach out either. But a few days after what I'd come to call the card incident, I got a Facebook message from Elise. "I heard you're upset. I get it, but this was really important for my kids. They've had such a rough year, and I thought you'd understand. We're family, Miles. Sometimes we do hard things for each other." I wish you could see it that way. I didn't reply. Instead, I blocked her. Because I was done. Done being the mature one, the bigger person, the silent observer who swallowed injustice for the sake of family peace. That narrative had cost me too much, and I wasn't about to raise my kids in the same cycle. But I'll be honest, those first few weeks were rough. Not just emotionally, but mentally. I started to second-guess everything. Had I been too trusting? Too naive? Did I not set clear enough boundaries? Was there something I could have done to stop it? Tessa, to her credit, never blamed me. Not once. In fact, she got more vocal than ever. Anytime someone brought up Marlene or Elise, she shut it down. We're not giving them another second of our energy, she'd say. But even she had moments of quiet sadness. I'd catch her scrolling through cruise photos online, or folding the kids in used swimsuits and tucking them away like tiny reminders of what was lost. Rock bottom came one night when I found Liam in the living room, looking at an old travel brochure I didn't even know we still had. It had a picture of a cruise ship sailing under the stars. He traced the image with his finger and said, "Dad, do you think someone else is using our room on the boat?" I didn't know what to say, because yes, someone else was, and they had our names on their tickets. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. Not to stew, not to search for refunds, not to file a complaint, but to think, really think, about who I was and who I wanted to be. Because the truth was, I'd let this family dynamic define me for far too long. I'd been the quiet one, the fixer, the one who backed down, who stayed polite, who made peace even when I was bleeding inside. And I didn't want to do that anymore. So I started small. First, I canceled every holiday gathering we usually hosted or attended with my dad's side of the family. Birthdays, anniversaries, barbecues. I told them, kindly but firmly, that we were taking some space. Not out of malice, but because we needed to protect our peace. Marlene tried to call. I let it ring. Elise sent an email. I deleted it. My dad sent a long, vague message about missing the kids. I replied with a single sentence, "You let them get hurt. You don't get to skip to the reconciliation." Then I turned inward. I started spending every weekend planning local adventures with Liam and Ava. We found hidden hiking trails, obscure museums, an old drive-in movie theater an hour away. I made it my mission to give them memories no one could take away. Tessa joined in, and soon we had our own rhythm. Slow mornings, spontaneous outings, campfires in the backyard. It wasn't the ocean breeze, but it was ours. Financially, I tightened up. The cruise money was gone, but I wasn't going to let that define our year. I picked up extra freelance work on the side. Nothing crazy, just a few hours here and there after the kids went to bed. I used the extra income to build a small adventure fund and told the kids they could help pick the next surprise. That sparked something in them. Every week, they drew pictures of places we could go. Mountains, forests, lakes. Ava drew a rocket ship once and said, "We'll go to space, Daddy. They can't follow us there." I laughed harder than I had in weeks. Professionally, something else started shifting. For years, I'd been toying with the idea of launching my own consulting business. I had the skills, the contacts, the experience, but I'd always talked myself out of it. Too risky. Too much to manage with the kids. Too many variables. But now, after everything, I was tired of waiting for permission. So I started laying the groundwork. Built a website, designed a logo, reached out to old clients. And slowly, quietly, things started moving. It wasn't explosive, but it was mine. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was building something that couldn't be taken away with a few clicks on a booking portal. The fall had happened. Hard. But the rise? That was happening on my terms. And somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking about Marlene and Elise so much. They became background noise. Static. I no longer checked their social media, no longer wondered what they were telling the rest of the family. Because it didn't matter. Let them paint themselves as victims. Let them spin their narratives. I had nothing to prove to them. But I didn't forget. And I didn't forgive. Because as much as I was rebuilding, there was still a fire inside me. Not for revenge in the petty sense, but justice. Clarity. I wanted the truth known. Not through screaming or confrontation, but through action. So I waited. And I planned. Because one thing Marlene and Elise never understood was that I play the long game. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Kind doesn't mean blind. And when the time came, I'd make sure they felt every single ripple of what they tried to take from us. They thought they were clever. They thought they got away with it. But they'd forgotten something. You don't mess with a father's love and expect him to walk away unchanged. I used to think revenge had to be loud. Big speeches, slammed doors, dramatic confrontations on doorsteps in the rain. But the more I sat with what happened, the cruise, the betrayal, the gift card that mocked my family, the more I realized something important. Real revenge doesn't need an audience. It just needs precision. By the time the sting of the ruined trip began to fade and life slowly stitched itself into a new rhythm, I was no longer angry. I was focused. I wasn't planning to shout or storm into anyone's living room demanding justice. No, I was going to build something permanent, something they couldn't explain away or undo. The kind of fallout that looked like karma but was crafted with care. It started with paperwork. After cutting ties, I began to re-examine every financial and digital detail connected to Marlene or Elise. That may sound extreme, but trust me, when someone manipulates your trust, you start auditing everything. And it didn't take long to find something interesting. Back when my mom passed, she left a small inheritance in a trust. It wasn't much, some savings, a small piece of land near the lake we used to visit every summer. My dad, to his credit, never touched it. When I turned 18, I was given control of it. Over time, I let it sit, appreciating modestly. I'd always meant to build something meaningful there, but life got in the way. Marlene never liked that property. She once called it a mosquito swamp with delusions of grandeur at Thanksgiving. Said it was wasted potential and sentimental fluff. Elise had echoed those thoughts during one particularly icy family dinner, asking why I didn't just sell it and invest in something real. At the time, I laughed it off. Now I saw it for what it was, a hint. I pulled up the records, just to check the legal boundaries. What was in my name, what wasn't, who had access. The land was cleanly deeded to me. No ties. But in reviewing the property account linked to it, the one that handled taxes and utilities, I noticed an old joint access I'd never revoked. My father had been added years ago to help with some initial paperwork. I never bothered removing him because I trusted him. And just a year prior, there had been an unusual request for valuation and zoning information filed through the local municipality under his name, which meant someone, likely Marlene, had been sniffing around. Maybe they assumed I'd forgotten about it. Maybe they thought they could plant a flag in it eventually, some kind of claim through family legacy. I wouldn't put it past her. The idea of controlling something she once dismissed probably thrilled her. But that land was mine, and now it had a purpose. Over the next month, I hired a contractor and a local architect, not to build a house, not yet, but to create a modest, modern cabin, something livable, warm, and just big enough for my family of 4. A getaway, a sanctuary. The price wasn't small, but with the extra income from my side business and the funds I'd quietly saved since the cruise debacle, it was doable. I didn't tell anyone outside of Tessa and the kids. I wanted it to be ours, built from the ashes of what had been taken. Every Saturday, I'd take Liam and Ava out there to walk the trails, toss stones in the lake, watch the construction. They started calling it Camp Us, and the name stuck. We planted trees. We picked out paint colors. Ava picked a bright teal door and insisted it looked like adventure. Liam helped clear a small fire pit and started sketching plans for a treehouse. It became our cruise, the memory no one could touch or rename. And while all that was unfolding quietly, something else happened. I got a call from an old friend of mine, Mark, who ran a local community center. He needed help organizing a series of workshops for parents, financial literacy, career transitions, home budgeting. I'd done a few of these before and always loved them. He asked if I could host one in the fall. I said yes. That workshop changed everything. What started as a single session turned into 3, then 6. Then a local nonprofit reached out. Then a school district. Word spread that I was good with people, honest, helpful. My consulting business, which I'd launched more as a side hustle, began to take off. Not overnight, but with steady traction. And every client I helped, every family I supported, every young adult I mentored, it added fuel to the quiet fire inside me. Because I wasn't just rebuilding. I was thriving. And Marlene, Elise, they had no idea. Until one day, a mutual acquaintance let something slip. We were at a neighborhood fundraiser for the community center when Marlene's friend, an older woman named Janice who never quite knew when to keep her mouth shut, walked over to me at the refreshment table. She smiled like she knew a secret. "I saw your name in the paper," she said. sipping from her lemon water. I blinked. The paper. She nodded. There was a little write-up about the workshop series. Something about how you're helping families plan for their futures. Marlene was just beside herself. She said she didn't realize you'd become such a public figure. I smiled politely, trying not to react. It's just local stuff. Nothing big. She said you were always the quiet one, Janice added. But now you're the one making waves. Funny how that works. I thanked her and walked away, but my mind was already turning. So Marlene had noticed. That meant the image she'd carefully built, the narrative of Miles, the meek stepson who gave away a cruise and stayed silent, was starting to unravel. And she didn't like it. Not one bit. A week later, I got an email. From Marlene. Subject: let's talk. Miles, I heard about your workshops. That's wonderful. I always knew you had potential. I think we should get coffee sometime and catch up. There's no need for all this distance. Families should be able to disagree and still support each other. Let's talk. I didn't respond. Because now I knew something she didn't. I didn't need her. That knowledge was power. And I wasn't done yet. Because while I had moved on personally and professionally, there was still one piece left to play. A final card. And for that, I needed help. I reached out to Chris, my younger brother. We hadn't been especially close over the years, but after the cruise incident, he'd quietly reached out. Sent me a short message. Saw what they did. I'm sorry. Let me know if you need anything. At the time, I just said thanks. Now I needed him. Chris was sharp. Always had been. He worked in tech, and while he wasn't the hacking type, he knew systems. How people moved through digital spaces. How footprints got left behind. I asked him if there was any way to confirm, beyond a doubt, that Marlene or Elise had accessed my cruise booking. He called me that night. Not only did they access it, he said, they logged in 3 separate times in the week before the cruise. I traced the IPs, same location as your dad's house. One of the sessions uploaded 2 passport PDFs, likely scanned from a phone. They didn't even mask the file names. Caleb_passport, JPG, real smooth. That was the proof I needed. Not to press charges or make a scene, but to take control of the story. I compiled the evidence, screenshots, timestamps, access logs, and filed a formal report with the cruise company's fraud department. Not because I expected a refund. I didn't. But because it created a paper trail. A black mark. Something official. Something that couldn't be explained away at the next family dinner. And once that report was submitted, I made a choice. I scheduled a family meeting. Not a trap. Not a blow-up. An invitation. I told my dad, Marlene, and Elise that I wanted to clear the air, one time, one meeting, and then we go our separate ways. My dad was hesitant, but agreed. Marlene replied with a polite, looking forward to it. Elise didn't reply at all. I booked a private room at a neutral spot, a quiet library conference room near downtown. No drama. No theatrics. Just 4 chairs. 1 folder. Inside the folder, the proof. This wasn't going to be revenge by screaming. It was going to be revenge by exposure. And I was ready. Because after all this time, all the gaslighting, all the manipulation, all the fake smiles and sugar-coated sabotage, it was finally my turn to speak. And they were going to listen. The day of the meeting arrived, and the sky was overcast. One of those gray, heavy afternoons that made the world feel muted and serious. I drove alone. Tessa offered to come, but I told her no. This was something I had to finish on my own. Not because I wanted to face them. Frankly, I didn't. But because I needed to. I wasn't walking into that room to yell or rage or demand apologies I'd never get. I was walking in with the truth. The kind of truth that strips every lie bare, no matter how thickly it's wrapped in family pleasantries. The library conference room was quiet, clean, and cold. Neutral ground. I got there 15 minutes early, set down the folder, and waited. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't racing. I wasn't there to fight. I was there to end something. At 3:02 p.m., they walked in together. My father first. Eyes tired, shoulders hunched like he already knew what this was going to be. Marlene next, with her signature pastel scarf and the practiced poise of someone who thought the world would bend before she'd ever admit fault. Elise trailed behind, holding her phone like a shield, barely glancing at me. They took their seats. "Thank you for coming," I said calmly, sitting down across from them. No small talk. No forced smiles. "I asked you here because this will be our last conversation. After today, we're done. So I'm giving you the opportunity to hear the truth. Nothing more, nothing less." Marlene crossed her legs, feigning grace. Miles, I think you're blowing all of this. I raised a hand. No, you don't get to set the tone anymore. Just listen. I opened the folder and slid 3 pages across the table. Screenshots, timestamps, and IP logs showing who accessed my cruise account. Dates, times, device types. One even listed Samsung Galaxy S9 with a location match to my father's home Wi-Fi. On June 9th, at 2:13 p.m., someone logged into my cruise reservation from your address. That session changed the names on the booking. It also uploaded passports labeled Caleb_passport JPG and Natalie_form.pdf. These aren't accidents. They're not misunderstandings. They're intentional acts of fraud. Marlene's lips twitched. I don't know what that proves. Anyone could have. Elise, I said, turning to her. Did you or did you not send me a thank you text before I even knew the names had been changed? She looked up from her phone, her face stiff. I was trying to be gracious. Mom said you were offering the trip. My father finally spoke. That's what I was told too. Told by who? I asked quietly. Because I never said that. Not once. Not in person, not by text, not by smoke signal. And you never asked me, Dad. You just accepted it. He had no response. Just looked down at the table. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence settle. This wasn't a misunderstanding, I said. It was theft. You took something from my kids. You made them believe they were going on a trip they'd been dreaming about for years. And then you handed it to someone else and called it generosity. Marlene exhaled sharply, like I was being dramatic. Miles, they're children. They'll get over it. Elise was going through. This isn't about Elise, I snapped. This is about you, Marlene. You orchestrated it. You lied. You manipulated my father. And you raised Elise to think she's entitled to whatever she wants, even at the cost of other people's happiness. And guess what? I don't care why anymore. I just care that it stops. Now, Elise finally spoke. So what? You're going to cut us off forever over a trip? I looked her in the eye. I already have. They blinked. This meeting isn't to ask for anything, I said. It's to let you know what happens next. I pulled out the last 2 pages from the folder and slid them across the table. The first was a printed copy of the official fraud report I'd filed with the cruise line. The second was an email chain with the company's legal department confirming they had blacklisted Elise and Marlene from future bookings due to fraudulent activity. Any attempt to rebook would flag their accounts and be denied pending further review. Marlene's mask cracked for the first time. You reported us? I did. Because there have to be consequences. Not the kind that come from screaming and family drama, but the kind that come from documentation. You don't get to manipulate people and pretend it didn't happen. That trail leads somewhere now. And if you try to spin this story to anyone else, just know I have every receipt. Elise stood up, furious. You think this makes you some kind of hero? You ruined our summer. I stared at her. You ruined your own summer. I just made sure the truth followed you. She stormed out. My father looked at me, his face pale. Miles. I shook my head. I'm not doing this anymore, Dad. I spent most of my life trying to keep things peaceful, being the one who let things go. But letting it go is what gave Marlene permission to keep going. And I can't raise my kids around that kind of lesson. He looked like he wanted to say something, but for once, he didn't. He just nodded. Maybe he finally saw it. Maybe he finally realized how deep it had gone. Marlene stood. This is petty, Miles. I hope someday you realize how vindictive this was. I smiled. Petty would have been showing up on the cruise ship with a megaphone and a list of your crimes. This was me being calm and thorough and done. She turned on her heel and followed Elise out the door. My dad lingered for a moment. If I want to see the kids, you'll have to do it without her, I said simply. That's the line. He nodded again, this time slower. I understand. Then he left. And just like that, it was quiet. I gathered my folder, took a deep breath, and walked outside. The air felt lighter. The weight I'd carried for years, of being polite, of making peace, of swallowing my own anger for the sake of family, had lifted. It wasn't revenge in the traditional sense. There were no explosions, no dramatic confrontations, just cold, undeniable truth laid out like a blueprint. They weren't arrested. They didn't go broke. But they lost something. Access, control, the ability to rewrite the story. And me? I got everything I needed. The cabin, campus, was finished 2 months later. We had our first overnight stay in early fall. The leaves were turning, The lake was still, and the kids ran barefoot across the porch, laughing like the world was made just for them. Tessa brought out hot cocoa and sat beside me on the swing. "You did it," she said softly. "You really did it." I watched the sun dipping below the trees and smiled. "No," I said. "We did. Because revenge doesn't always come with fire and fury. Sometimes it comes in the form of peace. Earned, claimed, and untouchable. And that's what made it perfect."